Well, tonight, guys, I'm going to be talking about something that's probably going to be ruffling some feathers, but honestly, I don't give a crap. But anyway, let us talk about why you don't need high-end hi-fi. Before we get started with that, I wanted to say the only Jeff Lorber Fusion album you need is Liftoff. Okay, this is sort of the compilation of the Jeff Lorber Fusion, which, those unfamiliar, is a jazz fusion group headed by Jeff Lorber, and kind of similar overall to Weather Report or the early work of Chick Corea. This is really the only one. It really covers his early period, kind of before he got sort of the smooth jazz vibe going on. This is actually a great album. So why don't you need high-end hi-fi? Well, you don't necessarily. Of course, you don't need anything. Technically, to live, all you need is water, air, and food occasionally, and you're good to go. As people that have been incarcerated will tell you, it gets them by. But in any case, what I mean by that is if you look over the history of my channel, and those long-term subscribers that followed me from my old channel, which no longer exists, they will know that I reviewed a lot of hi-fi gear. I've had a lot of hi-fi gear. As a matter of fact, right here we've got the Cronus Magnum 2 from Rogue Audio, and of course the Klipsch Forte 4s. Also up top up here, you can't see it, but I've got the VPI Scout Junior that's basically been upgraded to a prime level. But in any case, this whole system, coupled with my AudioQuest power conditioner and my full AudioQuest cabling, is probably about $12,000 retail. Okay, now I didn't pay that for it, but that's probably the cost if you add it all up. And but saying that, I don't say it to brag, but I say it to kind of reference. I have experience with high-end hi-fi, but I also have experience with budget hi-fi. And at the end of the day, it is just as possible to get just as an enjoyable, pleasurable quality of sound out of something like the Sony STR DH190 and a set of Polk T15 cheap little bookshelf speakers and a cheap, crappy little plastic Audio-Technica turntable. It's just as possible to get just as much musical satisfaction out of something like that cost $300, $400 for everything, as it is by spending $12,000 bucks. Don't get me wrong, a $12,000 hi-fi system sure does sound frickin' awesome, particularly with the tubes and obviously with the Klipsch. This Cronus Magnum puts out about 100 watts per channel. It's got KT120s in it, so it is 100 watts. I know on the modern Cronus Magnum 3 and the Cronus Magnum Dark, they switched to using KT88s. The big reason why is KT120s over the pandemic became hard to come by, and the reliability of them became quite suspect. Also, I think they switched to kind of lower the noise floor. KT88s have less power, hence they're quieter. The KT120s, even with the volume all the way down and no signal on this thing, you can hear hiss coming out of it. You can hear noise out of the speakers. But suffice it to say, that's irrelevant because this thing is magical. I mean, really, truly phenomenal sound out of here. Great separation, great air between things. You get that great 3D sort of stereoscopic effect that happens with tube amplifiers, that you can almost see into the music. And I was listening to The Killers earlier, and I was listening to one of their albums, Hot Fuse, whatever. Anyway, I was listening to one of their albums, and Brandon Flowers, the lead singer for The Killers, you could feel him going up to the mic to sing, and you could almost hear his lips moving as he was singing, and like you could almost see it visually. That's kind of the magic of a tube amp, and of course playing through the Klipsch. And these Forte 4s are phenomenal. They really are. A lot of people talk about the Forte 4s as being the sweet spot for Klipsch Heritage Line speakers, and honestly, I would have to agree. I think these are phenomenal. Of course, it has the 8 or maybe this is the 12-inch or it's the 10-inch something bass driver. Of course, you got the mid-range Tractrix horn, and of course the tweeter, but then it has that big old, I think it's a 15-inch passive radiator on the back. They're absolutely phenomenal loudspeakers. They really truly are. And of course, paired with 100 watts out of the Magnum 2, you really are not wanting for power. This thing gets unbelievably loud I mean, ridiculously so. Way more. Actually, it's some of the most bass I've experienced in my current, living arrangement in terms of systems I've had in here. But yeah. As I said at the beginning, I'm sure this opinion will ruffle feathers. I know, and piss people off. I know I've made these kind of claims in the past, and people comment on those videos and say, well, God, I heard this thing and it was better than. Well, the truth of the matter is there really isn't a better. There's just a different. That Sony system I mentioned, the budget, STR DH190 paired with the very cheap Polk T15 bookshelves, which I've had that system. It does things not as good as this, but that doesn't make it any less relevant, and nor does it make it any less satisfactory. Actually, the STR DH190 is one of my favorite budget amps I've ever heard, just because of the musical satisfaction you get from it. It doesn't have great sound staging. Nope. It doesn't do great tone and timbre. Nope. It doesn't have that 3D effect that the Cronus Magnum does. Nope. But it gets you, it satiates. It fills you up. It does what you want to do with listening to music. And honestly, at the end of the day, does this, outside of its tricks, does this $12,000, does this do that any better? Does it satiate better? No, it doesn't. Anyway, that's enough of that. I'm going to put on some Toto and listen to Africa. Their best song, clearly. I mean, honestly, their best song. But I'm going to listen to some Africa. So anyway, peace out and leave comments down below. Tell me what you think.